What was supposed to be a ceasefire has instead turned into one of the deadliest days in Lebanon. On April 8th, Israeli airstrikes hit across the country with unprecedented intensity. In just 10 minutes, more than 100 targets linked to Hezbollah were struck across Beirut, the Bekaa Valley, and southern Lebanon. Entire residential and commercial areas were hit, in some cases without warning. Early figures from Lebanon's health ministry reported at least 89 people killed and more than 700 wounded. But as rescue operations continued, the scale of devastation became clearer. By the end of the day, the death toll had crossed 180, with other estimates putting it as high as 250 or more, and over 1,000 people injured, making it the deadliest day since this phase of the conflict began in March. Hospitals were overwhelmed, ambulances fell short, and civilians were seen transporting the wounded themselves. Hezbollah responded soon after, firing rockets into northern Israel, saying it was retaliating for what it called Israeli violations of a ceasefire. But here's the core problem. There is no agreement on what that ceasefire actually includes. Just a day earlier, the United States and Iran had announced a 2-week truce meant to pause a rapidly escalating war that began on February 28th. Iran says the ceasefire includes Lebanon and requires Israel to stop attacking Hezbollah. The United States and Israel say it does not. Iran's leadership has accused Washington of violating multiple conditions, including continued Israeli strikes, alleged drone activity inside Iran after the truce, and the US position that it will not allow Iran to retain any uranium enrichment capability. US Vice President J.D. Vance has described the situation as a misunderstanding, saying Iran misrepresented the deal internally.
I think this comes from a legitimate misunderstanding. I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran, and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states. Now, that said, the Israelis, as I understand it, again, I'm supposed to get a fuller report when I get on the plane, have actually offered to be, frankly, to check themselves a little bit in Lebanon because they want to make sure that our negotiation is successful.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made it clear that operations against Hezbollah will continue, with the military instructed to use every opportunity to strike. Even as this confusion plays out, tensions are rising on another front. Iran has again moved to close the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical oil shipping routes in the world. Only about a dozen vessels were reported to be passing through daily, and Iran is now seeking to impose tolls of up to $1 per barrel on oil shipments. The White House, under President Donald Trump, has rejected this outright, calling the closure unacceptable and demanding the route be reopened. The global stakes here are enormous. Any disruption in the Strait of Hormuz threatens energy supplies, oil prices, and the wider global economy. At the same time, both sides are claiming victory. The US says Iran's military capabilities have been significantly degraded. Iran says it forced the US and Israel to accept its conditions. But what those conditions actually are remains unclear. There is confusion over multiple versions of the deal, an earlier 10-point proposal rejected by Washington, and a revised 15-point plan now under discussion. Key sticking points remain unresolved. These include Iran's nuclear program, especially whether it will be allowed to continue uranium enrichment, the lifting of sanctions, the release of frozen Iranian assets, and the presence of US forces in the region. Meanwhile, diplomatic efforts are continuing. Talks are expected to begin in Pakistan, led by Shehbaz Sharif as a key intermediary, with J.D. Vance expected to lead the American side. World leaders are increasingly concerned. Leaders like Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer have called for the ceasefire to be expanded to include Lebanon and turned into a lasting agreement. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez has warned that temporary pauses cannot erase the scale of destruction, while Australia's Anthony Albanese has also backed calls for a broader truce. The United Nations has issued one of its strongest reactions yet. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk described the scale of killing in Lebanon as nothing short of horrific, especially so soon after a ceasefire announcement.